Welcome back to He's on Fire podcast. Thank you so much, guys, for bearing with me during my rough life that I've got going on now between moving and redecorating bathrooms. I know I haven't been as consistent as I'd like to be, but that is coming up. But thank you for tuning in to episode 7, He's on Fire podcast. Tonight, I have a very, very fun special guest that we're finally going to bring on here, Brad Denny. He's the other half of Speak of the Devils podcast, along with Joe Healy. So we're going to talk to him a little bit. And then, of course, we are going to bring on Amit and Jay to talk all things Arizona Cardinals, talk a little bit of Suns. We'll see what goes on with the conversation, but a lot of fun tonight. Thanks for tuning in. He's on Fire podcast. Let's go.
Sets, loads up, and it is caught! Down strong! Blitz coming, Matthews, Palmer extending the play, crosses the field, Larry Fitzgerald! Larry Fitzgerald is insane to the 4-yard line! Crowder looking, throws it alley, oh! He puts it down! He puts it down! They're getting a little wobbly. The downfield shot out you! The foot race! They won't get him! Center field! The Diamondbacks are world champions!
When I played that intro after the Arizona State BYU game, that did not slap, and I did not want to hear it anymore. It was awful. But now that we're coming back and finally on a little bit of a level playing field here, it is good to hear that again. And I would like to now bring on my guest, Brad Denny. I'm very excited to have him in. He is the host of one of my favorite podcasts that I listened to for the last, I think it was 7, 8, 9 years, whatever it was. But Brad Denny, thank you so much for coming on. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Absolutely. So we need to dive in right now to Arizona State football, and it was not a good scene on Twitter or any social media the night after. A lot of people were calling for Herm's head already. And I understand it. You know, we want to get to the Rose Bowl again. It's been since the 96-97 season. Fans are fed up. We've gone through coach after coach, and it just seems like it's the same results. But we have a game to play. They got to gear up for Pac-12 play. The real season starts. What is your vibe and feel being around the team after the BYU loss going into Colorado now?
Well, so far they're saying and doing all the right things and just talking about refocusing and having the ability to correct these mistakes. A lot of these issues are, largely self-inflicted. When we talk about the penalty, just kind of the execution issues, just taking the opening kickoff, 5 yards deep out of the end zone. That's something that you really shouldn't do. And if you have your experienced returner and DJ Taylor back there rather than Jordan Porter, perhaps that plays out much differently. But so far they're saying and doing all the right things about how to get the season back on track. And when they say that all their goals are still in front of them, they are technically correct in that regard. I mean, they're talking about making the Rose Bowl, and they're undefeated in conference play, obviously. So. But it really remains to be seen just how that loss and how that setback, how much of an impact it's actually going to have. And that's what I'm really curious. I think the first half on Saturday against Colorado is going to really kind of tell a lot. Do we see a team that comes out back in the friendly confines of Sun Devil Stadium, fired up, raring to go, and just trying to maybe show that some of those non-con struggles are a little bit of an anomaly? Or do we see some of a hangover effect that, they were dealt a setback, and a team that had such lofty expectations maybe can't deal with that, and maybe that was the first kind of thread that gets pulled, and things start to maybe unravel. So I think it'll be good. I mean, they're saying what they need to say and telling us all things that they need to tell us, but ultimately it's going to come down to what we see on the field. And I think that those opening couple quarters on Saturday nights could really going to say more than anything they say to us this week.
Absolutely, I completely agree. And I was listening to your guys' podcast today with you and Joe Healy, and you guys were saying basically, my expectations weren't to get to the college football playoff. Maybe we had too lofty of expectations. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, because I think anytime you go into a season in sports, that's the ultimate goal, is to win the championship, unless, what the hell are you doing out there? But considering where we've been to where we're going and we're supposed to be going, I understand the lofty expectations. I still think we can win the Pac-12 South. Especially this year, it's completely wide open. I don't want to say blame the fans for calling for Herm's head, if you will, but do you understand or empathize or see kind of where they're going and the trends, from what we've seen from Herm Edwards and not really having a real standout season, bowl victory? Do you understand where fans are going with this, or are you just like, hey, let's pump the brakes and let's see what happens?
Probably a little from column A and a little from column B, because I certainly do understand the expectations, and we've been talking all offseason long, probably actually going back a couple of years of just looking at this 2021 season as a year where everything should come together. And for me, on the podcast, I've been calling it a referendum year, even for the last couple of years. Just, this is going to be what really tells us if the pro model, the new leadership model, all those buzzwords, the reshaping of recruiting. And again, that kind of leads to a sidebar of the whole NCAA investigation thing. But, everything kind of led up to this year. And then you had all the super seniors coming back. Everybody's talking, Chase Lucas, Evan Field, Jack Jones, everybody's talking about coming back because they want to get this team back to the Rose Bowl for the first time in a quarter century. And then you just look at the overall talent level, and, just seeing these guys up close this year and in this offseason compared to, I've been covering the team for about 11 years now, and even just kind of following the team in the years prior, this is like the most loaded, probably well-prepared, well-equipped team for the Sun Devils to actually finally make good on their annual talk about making a run. I mean, granted, they didn't make the mistake of, say, 2015, where they put out that letter to the fans, and kind of that just, I think, stoked the fire. You had Todd Graham's comments, of course, best team ever. And then of course, they go out there. Yeah. And so, and then when things kind of unraveled there, that was obviously a lot of source of frustration. I think the Sun Devils kind of put some fuel on the fire there. I get a little bit of different sense heading into this season, but those expectations are what they are. And as you mentioned, the South right now is a mess. I mean, the conference really outside of Oregon is a mess, and things are still wide open, even though that there is that deflating loss. And, as I talked about on this week's podcast, I think there's a difference between a bad loss and a very disappointing loss. And I think that the BYU defeat is definitely in that latter category, that the Sun Devils is disappointing because they should have won that game. They were the more talented team. That was very clear from basically the entire time. Even with 16 penalties and 4 turnovers and a number of other execution errors that we typically have not seen, that at least to that level in the Herm Edwards era, they were still down. It was still a 1-score game late in the fourth, and on the road against a ranked team, a BYU team that's pretty good. So, granted, I think a bad loss, that's like U of A losing at home to an FCS team, a bad FCS team at that. So I think that, the Sun Devils are in a weird space that typically they seem to be in a lot, where they've been dealt a setback. There's a lot of expectations, and then it just leaving the fans with, and kind of that battered fan syndrome. And I certainly understand that. I mean, so many ups throughout the years that even no matter how good it is for, even just kind of across Sun Devil sports, whenever things are going good, you're just waiting for that other shoe to drop. Like basketball team last year, most talented team ever. And then all of a sudden the pandemic, COVID hits, issues, blah, blah, blah. And then just kind of until I think maybe there's a breakthrough championship somewhere down the line at some future point for a Sun Devil major program, that whole thing's going to exist. So I think that, there's going to be a lot of fans that every loss is going to be clean house, fire everybody, or hopefully there's going to be some that, at least in terms of this early season loss, a non-conference defeat against a good team on the road. All right, that sucked, but hey, big picture, things are still in place. We can make a run. Let's reserve ultimate judgment until we have a little bit more data in front of us.
I completely agree. There is no reason why we can't run the Pac-12 South and run through the rest of the schedule the way everything's looking, and maybe surprise an Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game. That can reasonably happen because we have the talent to be able to do so. But I know you guys brought it up on your podcast, and you're going to hear it again. The similarities between what was just said and the feeling of going into 2015 with Todd Graham and going in against Kyler Murray and Texas A&M. I guess Kyler Murray came off the bench that game, but it was a Texas A&M game. And then 2011, when we had all those high expectations, Brock Osweiler turned out to be his last year. That was a little different considering we had injury after injury after injury before we even hit the field. But the expectations, the feeling, the talent, best team I've ever coached was the same. And then, of course, ASU basketball this last year. I was so ecstatic. I'm a huge basketball fan. I coached this past year, and just to see them fall flat in their face. I said it just on Suns Jam session just a few minutes ago. I have Stockholm syndrome from being a Cardinals fan, from being a Sun Devil fan, from being a Suns fan, and we are waiting for the other shoe to drop. So I kind of already asked this to a point, but you're saying that they are saying the right things or doing the right things, which we've heard. Do you personally, Brad Denny, think that we are going to be able to push forward, come out with a victory, and not just a victory where they miss a field goal like the Vikings and Cardinals this past Sunday, but come out with a victory and actually feel good about where we are? Can we do that, Brad?
They can, and they damn well better. Just because, if you're talking about just this week, you got the Colorado Buffaloes. They've been bad. The defense looked pretty good at times, but this is a team that ASU should run by multiple scores. If they don't, if it is one of those situations where they hang around, and Colorado's had a weird thing in the last few years, they've kind of had ASU's number when in the last couple of when it's some matchups that ASU should not have lost. And if that's the case, then it's almost kind of like, I believe it was that same 2015 year where there was kind of an easy non-con. I believe it was Cal Poly or Sac State or something like that in New Mexico, where it's like, all right, this is the best ASU team ever, at least in their words or Todd Graham's words. And then they kind of struggle to put them away. Like, no, if you're a team of that caliber, you put teams away. You put your foot on the neck and you take care of business. So in Colorado, I think, so from what we've seen so far through their 3 games, they kind of were slow out of the gates against Northern Colorado. They couldn't put away an A&M team that was down its starting quarterback for most of that contest, and then just really were terrible. 63 total yards of offense a week ago at home. This is a team that if ASU is who they think they are, who they've been telling us that they are, who we've seen them kind of develop into, and just in terms of the increase in talent level, they're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster. The last few years over the recruiting classes have objectively been a lot better. That this is probably the most talented team that we've seen in, several years, if not 96. So if they're that type of team, and that's all exactly how it's supposed to play out or going to play out, they're going to absolutely take care of business and throttle the Buffs on Saturday. If they don't, not even talking about a loss, but if they're just kind of an unconvincing way and just kind of how maybe they did, Sac State or Cal Poly in that 2015 season, to continue that parallel, that to me is going to raise a lot of red flags as they really dive into the meat of the schedule. Then after that, you're going on the road to UCLA. That's not going to be hard. ASU's has a real tough time the last 2 trips out there. And then some big matchups ahead, even though that, the rest of the conference may not have looked so great. To me, if ASU struggles coming off of that humbling experience and, that thing that, that supposed supposed wake up call against BYU, then I think it's fair game to kind of like really start questioning things and thinking that this might not exactly be what they had hoped or what fans had hoped.
I completely agree. I just want to give a quick shout out to the chat. Darth Voida had a really good point. Host of Suns Jam session that I was just featured on, winning Pac-12 games will cure all. I completely agree. If we go on a 2, 3, 4 win streak here, this will be a memory, a figment of our imagination, and who knows what BYU is going to do from here on out, right? I do want to thank everybody for taking the time to listen in on YouTube. Please smash that like button, share this out, and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And head on over to Anchor, donate to the podcast if you feel like we're doing a good job and want to keep this going. Please do so. Would really appreciate it. We're also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Playlist, so please support the podcast. DevilsDigest.com just came out, and I believe Hode runs it if I'm not mistaken. But he just came out. He put the depth chart out there, and I see some encouraging notes on there. I see running back Rashad White or Diamante Trainum. At the X position, wide receiver, I see Andre Johnson or Brian Thompson. I also see kick returner and punt returner DJ Taylor returning as well too. Are those going to help solidify the Sun Devil front? We obviously miss them. Obviously they're going to help, but are they really going to be back? Like we thought Chip was going to be back last game and he really wasn't. Are these guys going to be ready to roll, Brad?
See, I would caution folks from taking that the depth chart in this week's game notes as gospel. Unlike the NFL, where they have to put out, for the actual legitimate injury report, or at least unless you're the Patriots, a legitimate injury report. I mean, college, there's no such incentive, and there's been some things that kind of from ASU side of things can maybe clamping down a little bit, just trying to close the ranks in terms of injury reporting. So I would caution folks just to who see that and then think that, those guys are going to be back. A couple of those key names weren't participating in practice today. So it bears watching. And even just kind of, in practices, the viewing that media gets is now that it's in season is very limited. So I would just, don't get your hopes up on some of those names. Hopefully they don't need them to beat a team like Colorado. But just, those type of things aren't exactly the most accurate, nor do they have the incentive, nor are they required to really kind of be totally transparent with the media, or other teams are just putting it out there and don't want to give the opponent necessarily to pare down kind of what they need to prepare for. So
right.
Let them think that we're coming at them full strength. Force them to prepare for everybody. And then, whoever isn't able to play, then that's just how the cards fall there.
That's how college football works. And that's just a little arrow into the heart, because I love watching Chip Trayanum play. I mean, he is just an absolute beast. He's like Cameron Marshall mixed with any other bigger running back, Ryan Terrain with quick feet. I love watching him play. So that sucks. Thanks for that, Brad. Damn it. I was really hoping to look forward to him. Roy in the chat.
It's possible. I mean, I should say, don't take it as gospel, but I mean, the door isn't closed, and while they weren't exactly visible to the media in practice, that doesn't mean that, there might not be some gamesmanship, and, maybe they're in the bubble, or they're not,
Sure.
So I'll just say that I don't want to sound like the door is completely closed on some of these guys. And it is still, there's still a couple practices left to go. Just don't get the hopes up.
And there it is, Sun Devil fans, for anybody else wondering. Roy in the chat, real quick, thank you for tuning in. Who do you got, Razorbacks or Texas A&M? Bro, I got to go with Texas A&M on this. I know you're a Razorbacks fan, and I've been paying attention just for you, but I am going to go Texas A&M in that one. But we will talk a little bit more on college football later, Roy. I got another question for you that's kind of really at the meat and the potatoes of what Arizona State football is. It seems like every 4 or 5 years, we're going to get a new coach. We're going to talk it up. You have to be patient. You got to be patient now, because we're going to recruit, but it's going to take some time. And then 3 or 4 years down the road, we get to this point where we're at this season, and then we get injuries, we collapse. And Jonathan Poppy, I don't know if I said that correctly, so please excuse me. Yeah, Big Pop. He said it best. Like, it is what it is. At this point, this is what we expect Arizona State football to be, and that's part of the Stockholm Syndrome that I mentioned. And I don't want to hear the sleeping giant anymore. Obviously, that term has been overused over and over. Is this what Arizona State football is, or can it be more, Brad?
I believe it can be, but at some point the giant's not waking up. I mean, we've had decades and decades after this.
God. Yeah.
So like objectively, everything's in place. You're in a power conference, and still technically a power conference. I know that maybe some the eastern part of the country might still be throwing shade at the Pac-12. Still a legitimate conference. You are in a great location. You have great facility. Everything is in place. But at some point, if you're not fulfilling that potential, that just says more about the situation or the leadership than anything else. But again, that's more concerning, is that these same issues have transpired over multiple coaches, multiple athletic directors, multiple school leadership. So I do. So to answer, yes, I do think it can wake up, and especially in a Pac-12 conference that USC is still trying to figure out what it's going to be. It's got a very crucial hire upcoming. Are they going to fall in their same trap of just kind of getting a USC guy and then they're just okay for another stretch? Oregon looks like it's the ascendant power and that it's here to stay. But down south, things are still wide open. UCLA is not UCLA. USC is not USC, at least in the traditional sense. The rest of the division wide open. ASU, there's no reason why, given all the external factors, ASU should not be a perennial, top 2 in the South and maybe a top 2 or 3 in the conference. But, at some point you just are what you are. And that you can keep saying that the giant, it's a sleeping giant, and we're going to get there. We're going to get there. We just got to find the right coach. We got to find the right coach. But year after year, decade after decade, sadly, it's just not coming into place. And so at some point, you flat out are what you are, and that's your identity from here on forward.
And, I want to touch on that a little bit about people's identity. And I don't know if, how long you've been following college football or whatnot. I've listened to you for a while, so definitely quite a few years. And before Clemson started being Clemson, like winning national championships, they were known as a team that couldn't get over the hump. I even heard one time on ESPN, this was 2009, maybe 2010 or something like that. They're all running down the hill. You got the balloons going up and the orange crowd is going crazy. And they were playing a ranked team at the time. It could have been Georgia, South Carolina. I don't know who it was, but somebody said this is much like the Arizona State team. They just can't get over the hump. And then look what Clemson goes and does. And they weren't in the SEC. So I also want to put that there. Like, yes, the infrastructure is there. The new stadium, the new locker room. You have the tunnel entrance coming out with Pat Tillman as opposed to coming out of the other entrance that was always just kind of weird. We're on the right side of the field, we're on the sideline, just those little things that actually do add up in my mind. Everything is there to be able to take it over, and we just haven't. So that leads to my next question, unfortunately. It goes with recruiting, and Darth Voida, are the recruits turned off by maroon and gold? I think they are this year, considering all the allegations that are still just allegations out there. It's obviously affecting recruiting. We can speculate if it's affecting everybody on the field, but I think that's also why Arizona State fans are so frustrated, because we don't know what's coming next year. We don't know if we're just going to lose a few scholarships, if we're going to be placed on penalty. And so this year was such a key year, a pivotal year to make that leap, to make that splash, to do whatever we needed to do. And we can't get it done. As of yet, we can't get it done. So turning to recruiting, what are the rumblings, whisperings, whatever that you're hearing about Arizona State recruiting, on the positive or the negative side right now, Brad?
Well, it's not in great shape right now. I mean, they've obviously lost, several 4-star guys that had committed earlier in the spring prior to kind of the hammer drop of the NCAA news. And you wonder if there's going to be some more attrition going forward. Larry Turner Gooden, the 4-star safety. I mean, I believe he was just at Penn State. I think he's going to Texas next. And, his social media indicates that he had a great time. And you saw what Penn State was able to do, the game that he was at. So there's situations where you can see this class, they're only at 5 recruits or 5 commits right now, which I believe is fewest in the conference. And if you go by the Rivals ratings, they currently have the 12th rated conference or 12th rated class in the conference. Not great. So this could be a situation where with this NCAA cloud, this uncertainty, that you're having a real tough time closing the deal on, guys out of high school. And, the last couple classes for the Sun Devils have been really good, really strong, really promising. That momentum has come to a screeching halt. So this is probably a situation where maybe you're going to see ASU lean heavily into the transfer portal, getting guys that maybe only have a year or two that, want to come in, get some playing time, put together a couple good season before they can, hopefully increase their pro stock rather than get the guys that are going to come in and try to bank on, right now, with the coaching staff, you just don't know. And there's a sense that there's going to be a massive, if not complete shakeup, perhaps at the end of the year, or even almost regardless of how the team ultimately performs. Maybe they go out, they go out there, win the Rose Bowl, and they just ride off into the sunset, and that's the way it's spun. Or maybe things continue to transpire in a mediocre way. In any event, you're going to have it's going to be real hard to sell a talented kid out of high school. Say, hey, spend your next 3 to 5 years in Tempe, where we have no idea if the coaches are still going to be there. We have no idea what the NCAA allegations are going to uncover, or let alone penalties are coming down the pike. So I think this is going to be a class where you're going to see real heavy into that transfer portal, getting those guys, or maybe even junior college ranks, which we haven't seen ASU do much of under Herm Edwards. Just getting those guys that can maybe fill that gap and bridge, maybe a difficult year or two ahead.
That sounds like Dennis Erickson in a nutshell, man. Remember all those JUCO recruits that we just continue to bring in for 2 or 3, and then it turned into his whole tenure? That's a little scary. It just feels like we're backpedaling, and damn, I hate that. It is what it is. You know, these are allegations. Nebraska's dealing with the same thing right now. So we don't know what's coming around. It could be nothing. In my personal opinion, I don't even know if I've spoken about this on air, but if Baylor can get hit with absolutely nothing for what they did, how can this even be a legitimate allegation at this point? Like, it's unfathomable to me. Like, I get it. You broke the rules. Yes, maybe lose some scholarships. It's just crazy to me considering what happened to Baylor, but it's the NCAA. We don't. You could steal a pepperoni and you're done for the whole year. You know what I mean?
It's really interesting, especially with the Baylor situation. You know, basically, you know, the establishment and perpetuation of a rape culture in that program, or not even just beyond the football program. I believe it was across the with a number of their athletic teams. Just, you know, it's the horrific allegations, and the NCAA basically can do anything because they're like, oh well, it's, you know, basically criminal in nature, and the stuff that falls under our purview, we can only do a limited amount. Whereas, you know, as you talked about, just kind of the objective severity of, you know, that versus, you know, some of the stuff, the recruiting allegations, whether it's ASU, LSU, Nebraska, just, you know, the kind of the recruiting stuff, or the countless examples of just the ticky tack stuff that NCAA, you know, deems against the rules. I believe Rick Majerus got in trouble with the NCAA years ago for buying one of his players a hamburger after he found out that his father died.
Yeah, give me a break.
Yeah, just like the stuff that the NCAA is able to enforce and penalize for versus, you know, the actual legitimate stuff where people are getting hurt or that's criminal in nature. It's so scattershot, and that's why we're seeing just the tides shift against the NCAA as an entity in its current form. And I believe was in November, December, they're having that conference because they see the writing on the wall that these programs and these conferences, they don't need the NCAA. It's basically just a basketball tournament and a unified code of recruiting rules. So I think that they realize that, hey, these guys are prepared and starting to come to that realization. They can break off. They can do their own thing. They can revolutionize the way this sport is handled without us. So we better figure out what the hell we're going to do as an organization to stay relevant somehow. And that's another interesting element to this whole NCAA investigation thing, at least for me, is like what form is the NCAA going to be by the time all this comes around, or they're ready for a ruling or a judgment, or, you know, is the NCAA markedly different, and the things that happened perhaps aren't a big deal, or they're not caring, or they have other bigger fish to fry at that point? Or is it something where they're, you know, going to negotiate a deal with ASU, and perhaps, you know, because I know Michael Crow has been somebody who's been very cognizant of running a clean athletic department, and, you know, now you have these issues, so maybe he wants to just, you know, kind of negotiate a settlement. You've seen maybe some work on that front, just in terms of placing coaches on paid administrative leave, maybe proactive in that sense. So, or maybe, you know, if ASU, you just try to kick the can down the road. We've seen what's gone down in Tucson with the basketball program. They're still kind of in limbo years later. Do you try to kick that can down the road so the NCAA is basically insignificant in that aspect, and then just, you know, challenge them to lawyer up or whatever? I don't know. But the complicating factor, of course, is the alleged evidence that is already in the possession of the NCAA, that dossier, as folks call it, you know, with the alleged screenshot. Complicating factor. So that kind of, you know, sets the timeline a little bit differently. But it's definitely a black cloud. And, you know, obviously we talked about it. It's definitely impacting recruiting. And whether it's impacting on the field, I don't know. But there's no way that it's not impacting some of the focus, you know, of that coaching staff. And perhaps when you see the execution there, some of the blunders that we hadn't seen largely in the last 3 years, not hard to draw a connecting line.
Absolutely. I completely agree with everything you said. I'm glad you touched on the University of Arizona. I'm glad you touched on the NCAA and how, you know, these teams and conferences don't need them anymore. So thank you very much for that. Brad, switching gears just for a quick minute. ASU basketball, you've touched on it in your show briefly. I'm a huge Arizona State basketball fan. I can't wait to be covering them this year on this podcast. They have so many new players. I have never seen a team go through this type of turnaround. I know you mostly follow football and whatnot, but you've had Bobby Hurley on before. You've had Charlie Turner-Thorne on your show, and just a wonderful podcast. So everybody, please go to Speak of the Devils podcast. They're on all the major podcasts, and follow Brad Denny, one of the better podcasts out there for sure regarding Arizona State sports. But switching to the basketball real quick, what are the legitimate expectations of this team? Can you get a pulse on Bobby Hurley and company right now this early?
It's weird because you're getting back into that sense where, there's might be optimism here. There's some talent here, because you remember how just the last season spun out, where you have those massive expectations. Things don't go too well. Injury issues. You had so many new players in the COVID protocols. They couldn't practice together. They couldn't gel. And then as the losses mounted, you had some guys get hurt and maybe stay hurt or whatever, and kind of out there. And at the end of last season, things look real bleak. But then all of a sudden, you land a legitimate 5-star center. Then you get a couple of transfers that have, proven commodities at the, the Division I level. And all of a sudden, with some of the departures that could potentially be looked at as maybe addition by subtraction, you get a fresh energy in that program. Rashawn Burno, right, taking the head coach job, I believe, in Northern Illinois. That's a big loss for Bobby Hurley's bench. But you get a couple other assistants, Joel Justice, coming over. That's a quality assistant there. And all of a sudden, you have some pieces in place that for the first time, I don't know how long. I mean, ASU might have a legitimate, post presence, and have some depth there as well. With Enoch and Jalen Graham coming back, you got some backcourt players that can help fill the void. Marcus Bagley coming back. That was kind of
Kamani Lawrence.
Yeah, Kamani Lawrence coming back. I mean, for that playing there, and then Bagley coming back was after going in the portal. It was nice, pretty nice surprise there. Marion Jackson, he's another guy I've had on my podcast. Coming over, MAC Player of the Year. I mean, he could be a guy that might be, I don't may just say a better fit, because I don't want to just, besmirch what Remy Martin did over his career. One of the all-time greats of this program, what he was able to do. But you could just tell, and especially when Remy and Verge were on the floor together, that was such a oil and water situation. That did not work. But then Marion Jackson, a guy who is more of a distributor. I think a guy who can also shoot, but then you some other pieces. You get Jay Heath in here. Luther Muhammad is now going to be playing this year, and that backcourt's looking really good. And you have Marcus Bagley and Kamani Lawrence in the wings, and talked about the front court depth. This might actually be somewhat more one of the most complete teams that, at least certainly of the Bobby Hurley era, but maybe in recent Sun Devil history. Now, that's not to say, that you should have the same level of expectations that we had for last year's team. But I do think all of a sudden that you go from the end of last season where you're thinking, okay, this might be the last gasp of Hurley. Things are looking pretty bleak. This might be, a bottom 4 team in the conference, to a team that, I don't know necessarily would say a conference favorite, but, a team that can make some noise. And if, they get a lucky break here or there, I think, maybe a tournament berth. But I would say, maybe a top 4 or 5 team in this conference all of a sudden, and depending on how some of those young guys develop, and most of my focus is going to be how can that front court, because we saw what happened to them last year. I mean, teams just absolutely abusing them down low, and that, I mean, you have Remy and Alonzo and the shots, and just the shots weren't falling on any given night. That was ASU was kind of a one trick for me.
It was like Arizona State's first year with Bobby Hurley when he had Obi Oleka, or is that who it was? Yeah, it was Obi. So. Obi was his first name, and then Ramon Vila was our backup guy. So it was exactly like that. So to sum it up, Arizona State basketball,
he's heating up.
And that's what I like to see right there. So I'm really looking forward to that. I can't wait to watch them. I'm going to be cautiously pessimistic because Bobby Hurley has, recruited well, but constructing a roster, that's a different conversation that we can have. You can have all the 5-star point guards you want, but if you don't have a complete roster top to bottom, I don't know what to tell you. When I go out for basketball tryouts, this is obviously the high school level, I purposefully look for a 13, 14, 15 guy who can fill that 15-person role, who can fill that 13-man role, you know what I mean? And then who can fill that 9-man role that can, maybe spot start 1 or 2 times if he has to, but then come off the bench and really provide that 8 to 12 minutes of pure energy. So roster construction to me has been Bobby Hurley's downfall.
Agreed.
But we'll see this year. And he changed everything up. He said it himself. I need to recruit differently and find the right guys. But again, we're going back to guys saying the right thing. And Arizona State fans, we're tired of hearing the right damn thing. In fact, don't say anything. Prove it on the field. Prove it on the court. Brad Denny, any lasting words that you want to leave us? And you can even talk about that ugly little helmet that you got behind you there if you'd like to.
Yeah, my Steelers are struggling a little bit. Whether everybody in the defense getting hurt.
Rejected!
Sorry, I had to on that one.
It's some hard times, but we got the Bengals at home. Hopefully, some of the hurt guys get back and the offensive line decides to maybe show up and provide some level of resistance. That'd be great. But yeah, I just, I think, on basketball, I think, it's definitely a top half of the conference type of team, and maybe things come together. Some of those new guys, and I think you can't discount one big thing is they're going to have a normal-ish offseason. They've had a normal-ish offseason. Last year, guys were so separated, the pandemic restrictions, they just never could gel. I think that's going to be in their favor if things get going. They could surprise some folks, and on the football front, as I said, those first 2 quarters on this Saturday night are going to tell me a lot, and how they come out, how they respond. Was it in fact a wake-up call, or was it just maybe the first couple shots of a long night of drinking that's going to last the entire season? That's going to kind of derail things, and so we'll see. But I think the pieces are in place. Don't hit the panic button yet. I think after the next 2 weeks for sure are going to a home game against a team that you should roll, and then a tough, probably pretty evenly matched road game. Interesting situations. These games count, and it's conference record. If you're going to make a run to the Rose Bowl, you're going to tell me if this is a team that can make a run to the Rose Bowl. They're going to tell me in these next 2 games.
Boom shakalaka!
I completely agree. Colorado game is right now the most important game on our schedule. Brad, where can we find you on Twitter and your podcast? Please tell everybody.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Speak of the Devils is available on any podcast platform that you use. Drop us a 5-star review if you like the show. That'd be much appreciated. We're also on Twitter at SOTD Podcast, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram as well. Follow me on Twitter at bdenny29. That'd be great.
Thank you so much for coming on, Brad. I've been a fan for years. I was so fortunate to have Joe on a couple times. It's great to have you on. I really appreciate it. Thank you for all the work you do. Looking forward to the game, and go Devils.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Cheers. That was awesome to have him on.
He's on fire!
Always been a big fan, so I'm glad that he could join us. Sun Devil fans, it is what it is, but it's not over yet. Good things are coming our way. But now we need to turn it to the Arizona Cardinals. What a freaking game that we just had to deal with, right? Winning a last-second field goal miss. It reminded me of, I want to say it was 2010 or 2011 when we played the Raiders at home and Janikowski, of all kickers, shanked like a 23-yarder. Something small like that. Anybody in the chat remember? Go ahead and bring that on. But right now, I really want to bring back my co-hosts. It's been a while. I miss them. Amit, how are we doing, man?
Dude, I missed you guys, man. I wish we could have got together on Sunday. I'm glad we're getting together now because I think we all have a lot to say and think about this team.
We absolutely do. And then we are going to bring on the trifecta here. Jay Joyce. Jay, you are on mute currently, and I can't unmute you, so I hope you can. There we go. Jay, yeah. How are we doing, man?
I'm doing all right. It's good to be back. It's been a while, but I'm ready to talk about this game. Lots to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you guys for bearing with me through all of it. It is what it is. Life comes at you fast. So I just appreciate you guys for just bearing with me and still sticking around. So Amit, I want to start with you. Let's begin with the Vikings game and things that we noticed. The first thing I just want to point out, make sure everybody knows, is that we suck against zone run schemes. Yeah. We suck. Look at any Rams game 49ers game the past few years, and then you look at the Vikings game and what Dalvin Cook did. And that's no discredit to Dalvin Cook, because as Budda Baker said, he has some of the quickest feet he's ever seen. So even times when we were getting penetration, I'm like, oh, we got him this time. Shit, he's down the field for 12, 15 more yards, right? Like, it just was consistent with that. So other than that I just had to bring up, Amit, what are things that you saw that gave you signs of life or maybe pissed you off even more? Talk to me, Amit.
Yeah, I was really concerned with the defense because they could not cover in the secondary. They could not create pressure. And then, you like you mentioned, the zone running scheme was killing them. And if Kirk Cousins was a better quarterback, we would have lost that game. And meaning, like, it didn't come down to that field goal. It would have come down to, we should have been blown out. We should have been blown out. Because, and if you go back, I went back and watched the last drive a few times. He threw, and if this was, and he reminded me so much of Jake Plummer. He scrambles. Ooh. He gets he throws quick outs, quick slants, and check downs. Those were the only plays in that final drive. And I really think that Vance Joseph dialed the defense up to take away from any long passes after that first play where they gave up that long touchdown. And he was just like, you can have everything else. We're not going to give up the long plays anymore. And but Chandler Jones, man, 5 sacks, 4 tackles for loss. And he maybe had 1 pressure. Right?
I'm actually going to look at that. Yeah, keep going. Good call.
But at the same time, I think you tweeted out like there was a couple screen plays where their offensive linemen were downfield. Even JJ Watt tweeted out a play where he was getting held on the one play that Chandler Jones got pressure. So I don't know what was going on with that game. All I know is Cliff Kingsbury did a pretty good job in terms of play calling. That 4th and 5 play, I mean, it was all Kyler Jones, but he made the decision to
Kyler Jones. I like that. That's a good name too.
There we go. Kyler Jones. Dude. Kyler Murray made that play on 4th and 5 again, backing up this like second week in a row where he's backed up and throwing a ball. He eluded so much pressure again. I don't like the 5-out offense when they go 5 wide receivers and there's no protection for him, because then he's just kind of trying to scramble and figure it out, and he's not running as much as he did last year, which is smart, right? But and he was finding the tight end, right? Like he found Max Williams a few times.
I think like 6 or 7 catches for like 90 some yards,
which was
crazy.
Which is awesome to see. We need
94.
There we go. But I mean, I just still don't know when he knows when to run, when to check down. I think that part still needs to be figured out. But I think overall, he played a clean game, other than those 2 interceptions, which were horrendous.
I mean, our tackles played one of the worst games that I've seen in a long time. Excuse me, I am still dealing with a cold, so I apologize to everybody if you hear me coughing and whatnot. I'm trying to mute, but is what it is. Doing our best to gut it out for the sake of Arizona sports. But I haven't seen our offensive line just get shook like that in a while. I mean, I guess it was 3 years ago when we were god awful with Josh Rosen, so I saw it then. But it just seemed like he was under pressure constantly.
Yeah.
And that's the part that really got to me. Jay, I want to turn to you. Glad to have you back. Thank you again for joining. What are some of the things that you saw to give you a little hope, or just, again, to piss you off?
Well, I want to start with my comments that I made about the Vikings last week. I did talk a lot of shit. I did kind of underrate.
Deservedly so at the time.
Yeah, exactly. Like their offensive line didn't come to mind. This game showed how like they had a game plan, and it was to get Dalvin Cook like the hell out of the pocket and just get him going. They did great with the protection on Cook, and I actually have that photo Amit was talking about that JJ Watt posted, and Chandler Jones were
push it through. I'll share it.
I
just go over to this. No, you're fine. No, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I'll try to find that play too, where guys were downfield on that. Yeah, they miss plays, and I hate bringing up plays that coulda, shoulda, woulda been called, but at the same time, you gotta call some of those, especially if we're getting those.
Mm-hmm.
There was one or two plays where we got called for an offensive lineman downfield, so it's like, come on, man. If you're gonna be consistent both ways. Don't just be off with it all the damn time. Do you have that picture you want to show, Jay?
Yeah, give me 2 seconds.
So while you're bringing it up, I made the prediction that Patrick Peterson would have 4 penalties. I don't think he had any, but he got burned. I think it was like 4 catches for 98 yards and 2 touchdowns or something like that.
Yeah, and I listened to his podcast. I want to say it was Monday, where he's on with Bryant McFadden and P2. They're on there, and he was like, I looked at PFF this morning, and I'm like, what? 96 yards, 2 touchdowns. Where was I for the other touchdown? And then Bryant McFadden started saying, yeah, you don't really know about those zone schemes, and talk to me about this one. And he started going off on the play, saying what he was supposed to do, what the other guy was supposed to do. And PFF was wrong about that. And then I saw a few other things with Rodney Hudson. He had a PFF grade of 44 point whatever it was. And then 3 or 4 people tweeted in the comments of showing Rodney Hudson be an absolute boss. And he's the only one guarding at the line of scrimmage. Everybody else is behind the line of scrimmage, blocking their dude. And he's the only one here. And there was about 4 straight plays of him doing that. So I really question the validity of what PFF is putting out. I'm sure it's good to a point, but I don't know if that's 100% accurate. But he did get burned on that DeAndre Hopkins play in the end zone. He totally got burned on that one.
Oh, yeah,
he did.
But like I was saying, Minnesota had a game plan with dealing with the insane back line that we have. I watched the Bengals and Minnesota game week 1, and they were casual. Cook wasn't just running out the pocket. Cousins was comfortable. But this game was to get Dalvin Cook the ball as much as possible. They had no passing game. It was quarterback screens.
Except for the first drive of the game.
yeah, exactly. That was the only deep ball that that they threw that entire game. And it was killing us for the most part. But yeah, I want to give Minnesota credit for their offensive line. They performed really well, even though the officiating was kind of bad on both ends and not calling those holding calls. So
there it is right there. I don't know if you guys can see it on here. You might have to blow it up a little bit. I tried zooming in just now on the computer, and that did not work, unfortunately. And this is great content for everybody listening on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Playlist. Thank you for listening. We are currently looking at a picture that JJ Watt either tweeted or posted on Instagram. Oh, this is Insta. And he is clearly getting held right there by a Minnesota player, and they do not call that. So that's kind of proof in the pudding right there. And it is what it is at this point, but there were a lot of red flags outside of that. Amit, you brought up how many pressures he had. So he had 3 QB hits, and that's Chandler Jones, by the way. He had 3 QB hits, no tackles, no sacks, no tackle for loss, no pass defensed. And I think that's a little concerning.
Yeah, but I think that's part of the scheme of Minnesota, where they're just going to try to take him out of the play.
Okay.
So I'm not going to buy too much into that, because we know what Chandler Jones can do. He did it in New England. He's done it here. The guy is a sack master. So I'm not worried about that.
Well, considering I'm looking at it now, and I should have looked at this before I spoke, big time journalism error there, coach. The only other player that had a QB hit in that game was Jalen Thompson. Chandler Jones had 3. Jalen Thompson had 1. Our other safety. So nobody else on the defensive line had quarterback pressures other than Chandler Jones, which, does speak to the validity of Chandler Jones. The hero was just like, come on, Chandler, do better. He was the only one trying to get there, it turns out. Jay, what do you make of our defensive line lack of getting to the quarterback that killed us in that game? What do you make of that, bro?
I think just Minnesota, they knew exactly what they were going to do. And yeah, they got away with holding a lot, in my opinion, but they fulfilled what they wanted to do. I did want to talk about who had the highest at PFF on the defensive end. It was Isaiah Simmons. He had a 90.2. which like he is like he looked really
You
good.
love to see it.
Yeah, he looked really good. He looked engaged. He had some great plays. He disturbed like whenever he did get to Dalvin Cook. Like Dalvin Cook was just on fire that whole game.
He
But,
did good. Yeah.
yeah. So like Minnesota, they did their thing. When it just came to the offense, like I don't think Chandler Jones and JJ Watt were really expecting that. Like no one could really get to Cousins because he was dishing the ball like within a second of snapping it. So there wasn't really any time to get to Cousins to begin with. So you said Chandler got to him like 3 times, 4 times?
Three QB hits, or pressures, correct.
Yeah, so like I'm not surprised of that at all. So on the defensive side of things, like it could definitely be better, and we just gotta game plan for that because I wasn't expecting them to go solely to Dalvin Cook and just hope that he carried the game. And Minnesota almost like injured him, like because of how much they were using him. Like
he got hurt twice. And by the way, so we could stop Derrick Henry week 1, right? If you put Derrick Henry in a zone blocking scheme, does that mean that he's going to get like 2,500 yards
against us? That's what it means. I don't know. Is it like a Vance Joseph thing where he just is not good at that? Like, is that what it is? I don't know because it's been consistent, but it was like that with oh my gosh, I'm blanking. Who was the coach that we hired for one season with Josh Rosen? I'm completely blanking. What's his name?
Wilkes.
Steve Wilkes. But I mean, we lost with him. We would perennially tie or lose by a field goal with Bruce Arians as a coach. So it's not just that, but Vance Joseph has been getting just bulldozed by zone teams. But when we played man against Tennessee, Golden was getting in there. You saw JJ Watt beating their man or getting double teamed, and then Chandler Jones feasting that game. You know what I mean? Yeah. So obviously when we play man defense, it's a lot better, at least up front. As far as the back, I remember coming on with you, Amit, and Salty when he was on. We were talking about, a lot of the strengths of our team and how Budda Baker's just a boss. But he has to make a lot of those tackles because the linebackers or defensive line couldn't, right? He was making up for their ineptitude, if you will. Yeah. Budda Baker had 8 tackles. The next guy, Jalen Thompson, 8 tackles. Both of our safeties led in tackles. Who was right behind that? Isaiah Simmons, Jordan Hicks, Robert Alford. Those all of our tackles
in the middle of the field. Like
exactly.
That's because Dalvin Cook was cooking us.
100. Their offensive line was cooking us, bro. Yeah. I mean, I could have run through some of those. They even said it on the telecast. They could have ran through all of those holes. Yeah. We got torched in our offensive line PFF. I think DJ Humphries was like a 25 or a 24. It's really, really bad. That's just getting lit up. So we go from one game to another, granted completely different schemes. Are you guys still drinking the Kool-Aid, or are there a lot of red flags going off in your head? Amit, I'd like to start with you.
Well, I think the good thing about this game is that if we would have lost it, there'd be a lot of corrections made. The fact that we barely won this game, we should have lost the game. I think we get that win in the standings column, and we can still feel shitty, and we can build on it. So that's the way I'm looking at this, is where we can go, hey, man, that was a fluke. We're playing Jacksonville at 10 a.m. Arizona time. We need to be ready. Even if they're a shitty team, we need to be ready. There's Urban Meyer. He's a fantastic coach in college, and we'll see what he can do in the NFL. And I think even Kingsbury was talking about it. I saw a presser where he was just like, yeah, I mean, that guy's the best college coach, one of the best college coaches of all time. So he knows who he's facing. Right. And Jacksonville doesn't have a lot of talent, right? I mean, either they have talent or it's really young or they don't. We don't know yet. But from what I've seen from Trevor Lawrence, I expect this team to win by 7+.
He's heating up.
Okay. I like that. This is a little bit of a trap game going into it. Jay, kind of same question to you. Do you have red flags and sirens going off in your head, or are you still drinking the Kool-Aid? Where are we at with you?
I'm still drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit. I'm not really seeing red flags. It's early in the season. We're testing things out. We played a lot of man week 1, and we stayed strict to zone. Week 2, zone doesn't work for us. So I think for now on, we're going to do man for the most part. Shout out Matt Prater for that 62-yarder dime.
That was dope. That was dope.
Crazy.
It's so weird seeing like an
field goal kicking
Cardinals kicker, yeah, like actually be good since Jay Feely. But like I don't see any obvious red flags right now. Besides maybe it's still our corner position because I didn't realize who is it, Jones, our other corner besides Brian Murphy. Like
you mean Alford? Robert Alford?
Yeah, like he's pretty short. Like he was getting caught over a lot, but yeah, I'm not seeing any
5'10". Yeah,
I wasn't seeing obvious red flags. Like Kyler Murray, he looked great. He just won NFC Player of the Week. It's his 5th one, tying Kurt Warner for the franchise, which is nice. But you can also argue that Kyler's probably the best QB opening up the season. Like everything's looking good right now for the most part. So
I like your guys' enthusiasm.
Yeah, like it's good that we had a close game like this early in the season than later. Like it's like we definitely need to change things up on the defensive end and how we approach. But besides that, I really can't complain.
He's on fire.
Yeah, we really need to figure out how we're going to play the run game with those types of teams because we have 2 in our division that run that kind of way, and they live off the play action. So
does Seattle. I mean, every team lives off the play action in our division.
Yeah, so we really need to figure that out. Like we really need to figure that out.
I completely agree. I'm looking forward to the game. Salty thanks for tuning in, bro. Really appreciate you. He said that the Jaguars game is absolutely a trap game. And I almost don't care if it's a trap game. And if we win by 7-5-3, like I'm less worried about this game than I am for the next week of the Rams. And so, yeah, it is a trap game, obviously, for that reason. And you can't look past them. But you know, a bad loss is better than, or a bad win is better than a good loss. So we'll obviously take that every time. I really just want to come out healthy. And on top of that, I want to see a steady dose of our offensive line dominating and run the fucking ball. I want to see them actually run between the tackles, chew up a little bit of clock, and run that type of offense. I don't think they're going to do it because it's Cliff Kingsbury, and I just hope he doesn't come out and really act cute. You know what I'm saying? No,
100%. Because if you guys remember last year, he would run like we were like the 9th best running team. Like we were actually more of a running team than a passing team.
Right.
And there was 2 plays that I was looking at it and I'm like, I know what they're doing. Like if you guys remember that 4th and 1, or maybe it was 3rd and 1. And they had Connor in the backfield. Kyler was in shotgun. And I'm like, this is a drop hole, bro. This is going to get stuffed. This is going to get stuffed.
Thank you.
Right? And then the other one was the flea flicker play, which I'm like, this is you guys are running a flea flicker. Everybody sees this. And then obviously I think it led to a sack or something. But I mean, those are the 2 plays where I'm like, you know, you guys got to do better. But I mean, overall, I think like the play calling was pretty good. I think Kyler was exceptional. AJ Green was exceptional. The touchdown play,
he broke out a little bit. Yep.
Yeah,
he had that he had that one catch where I'm like, how did that ball even get to him on the sideline? And then he had that one in the middle of the field where it was like, again, how did he even catch that? He had a great game. Again, filling in that Larry Fitzgerald role for the team, making those clutch catches. Hopkins is hurt. He's got a rib thing. He didn't practice today.
He does that every week though. Like he's off like a Wednesday or something, and they always say something. It's like the Veterans Day off, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but they usually just say rest. If you go and look at the rest of the
Ooh,
guys,
good call, bro.
yeah.
Yep.
And for him, it said ribs. So that's a little concerning to me, especially because he did not show up in the second half of that game.
You think that was because Patrick Peterson shut him down, the offense didn't go to him, or it just wasn't there?
Patrick Peterson didn't shut anybody down. Come on.
Wah, wah.
I know you're trying to get a conversation going, but that's it. He didn't do shit.
Facts. What else do you guys want to talk about? Let's shift it to the Jaguars, if you wouldn't mind a little bit. East Coast, 11 a.m. game. I was talking to 49ers Cutback yesterday, and then I did a little research on it, and he's completely right. Alex was saying on that show, which you guys should definitely go check out after this for a Quest for the West segment, he said that James Robinson is not an Urban Meyer guy. Urban Meyer doesn't really like him that much, and it's kind of showed in his carries considering what he did last year. I think that's a big effing problem for the Jaguars. Just me telling you that, Jay, and James Robinson going off last year, Urban Meyer being the new coach, ETN goes down, the guy that he wanted. You see the new quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence's struggles. Just hearing that, does that give you more hope and that you're even overlooking the Jags a little bit more? Or what do you think, just me telling you that, Jay?
I want to start with like the whole trap game thing. Is it really a trap game when the opposing team has no signs that they're going to win at all during the season?
That's I mean, for an Arizona sports fan, that is the epitome of trap game, like the ultimate plateau of it.
Okay, I'm like viewing it just as like more of like an NFL watcher, but
you're viewing it as a biased fan. I'm viewing it in the eyes of the Arizona sports goggles, bro.
All right, got you. So I think the Jaguars season isn't going to be good at all. I mean, I think everyone just kind of assumed that anyway. But sure. I think all this comes down to not Trevor Lawrence, but Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer, even before he put on a Jaguars shirt and a hat, he started with that Tim Tebow controversy, bringing him in, then cutting him, and bringing all this unnecessary attention. And then with the whole running back room thing, I don't think there's a good system and good atmosphere over there in Jacksonville, even though I've always liked the Jaguar culture in a sense, even though I really liked them a few years ago when it was Blake.
Sure. When Calais Campbell was out there. Yeah.
Jalen Ramsey, that was a good ass team. I really like that team, but just how Urban Meyer's been constructing everything ever since he announced that he was going to be the head coach and he's bringing in Trevor Lawrence and then that Tim Tebow thing. I just don't have faith that they're even going to win a game. They might put up some points. I think Trevor Lawrence might have a
couple breakout games. Yeah,
a couple breakout games, but I don't see this as a trap game at all. I think this is just a good exhibition game for us to see what we're going to run against the Rams the following week.
That's scary. Yeah. And you also don't want to have to show a lot of things either, which brings me back to my other point. I just want to see them run the damn ball between the tackles. And Amit, thank you for pointing out that 3rd and 1, because I think there was maybe one short of the goal line where they did this too, where it was 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, or 2nd and 2 even, and they're in shotgun.
Yeah.
What the hell are you? Just get up behind the center and go. Kyler Murray's got quick feet, bro. He can get that snap to the running back probably a lot faster than Ben Roethlisberger nowadays.
And if you remember, I mentioned this after the first game when we ran that, I think it was a 3rd and goal or whatever it was, when we put J.J. Watt behind Kyler. He had two. He basically was kind of like a wishbone. He had two linemen with the back, and then he ran that bootleg. Why aren't you doing that play? You can run that play. You can run the option. You can run the play action. You could just hand it off. There's so many.
I would like to see a little pistol option too, with James Conner in the back, and you got Rondale Moore on one side, and you got Chase Edmonds on the other.
Yes. Yeah. No. Exactly.
I'd like to see that. Hey, what about Rondale Moore? Rondale Moore is looking like a stud. Yeah.
13 targets.
Go for it.
Oh yeah, like Rondell. After 2 weeks, he has 13 targets, 11 receptions, 182 receiving yards. Reminder, like he's a rookie, 16.5
Yeah.
at 16.5 yards per reception, one receiving touchdown, and he's played about 37% of the snaps. So a lot of people on the Cardinals coaching staff know that Rondell is for real. He had some great passes, and of course that touchdown was incredible. And like he's like becoming my like favorite player right now pretty quickly.
He's that X factor, that Swiss Army knife. And honestly, it's turning out he was that guy that Cliff Kingsbury was missing in his system. And he does the punt returning. I'm sure he'll do some kick returns. Amit, talk to me about Rondale. I mean, we're going to have a nickname for him soon, right?
I know, right? Like it's sad to say, but with Fitz taking up that slot spot, we didn't have these kind of options. You know what I mean? And now you put this guy in the slot, and you could do a lot of things. And then one thing that's underrated too is his punt returns. Like he's shifted.
Yeah.
Like I think he's going to break one this year. I'm gonna go down and say he's going to break one this year.
Two. I think he'll do two.
Let's do it, man. I'll love it. I think I love that dude, man. I love Rondale Moore. I mean, I think he was the missing piece for us, especially with AJ Green rejuvenated now, and then Christian Kirk having what
a solid
year. He didn't have a great game, but he had a couple catches. But that game one, just some of those catches were just like elite catches. So I like this receiving core, and the fact that we found Max Williams now as a tight end option just to release it as a release valve for the offense. I mean, it's looking good. And you got Chase Edmonds out of the backfield. I mean, it just to receive.
He's caught a lot.
Yeah. The receiving game looks great. The running game is still a little suspect, but receiving game looks awesome.
And I almost wonder if that's by design. And when Jay came on after the Arizona State UNLV game, pardon me, I was saying to him that I think Arizona State's hiding some things and they're not trying to show everything for the BYU game. I mean, it turns out they definitely passed the ball a whole lot more, Arizona State did. So I'm wondering if it's possible at all that we're saving a little bit for the ground game, because you're right. Even, the game that Kenyon Drake got traded for 2 years ago on Halloween night and last year, like the running game was really the strength. Just run the ball. We were getting 4, 5, 6 yards. So I have a hard time believing that it's all on Chase Edmonds and James Conner too. I want to believe that they're holding a few things back. I think it's possible, but we're really going to find out. So I'd like to see that in the coming game. I'd like to just overall come out healthy with a win by any means. And if we win by 1 point, we're 3-0. And no one's going to care. We're going to hop off here pretty soon, but I want to let everybody know we will for sure be on next Saturday night with special guest Ralph Amsden. He's been a key cog in Arizona State sports and Arizona football for years, so he's going to be joining us after the Arizona State-Colorado game. 8:30 Valley time, we are going to be on back at our normal time on Sunday night. We're going to recap everything week 3 football, Cardinals and the Jags. We're going to look forward to the huge game against the Rams on my birthday, and we're going to win that game, by the way, and I'm really excited for that one. So, Amit, I hope you can get tickets, bro. That'd be a lot of fun for you to go to. So before we part off, Jay, I want to start with you. Our lasting words for our listeners for the night.
We're 2-0, probably going to be a 3-0 after Sunday. A lot of sports media have been talking about the Cardinals having us like 4th, 5th in the power rankings.
It's nice, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And the Kyler Murray, he's been looking incredible. And Cliff hasn't really been doing anything dumb besides, doing the shotgun shit. But things are looking good. Keep your head up. And I can't wait for the Rams game. I'm just going to go over the Jaguars game. I'm not worried. So.
Yeah, I do want to bring up real quick that in a lot of power rankings, like out of the top 8 teams, all 4 NFC West teams are in there. So again, come over to Quest for the West and 49ers Cutback. It's going to be great once we get our Seahawks and Rams correspondence. Amit, leave the people with something else here. What do you got for us before we close out?
Kyler is the truth. Kyler is an MVP player. He is, the next Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, whatever you want to call him. he's special, and you just enjoy it when you watch him, because the things that he does,
Thank you.
Not many guys do. And when you watch him, even when we're playing our opponents, Russell Wilson, just enjoy it, because Russ is special, too. And I just have so much confidence in him. So when we go to Jacksonville, and I think the spread opened at 7. I think it may be 7.5 now.
7.5, correct.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll win the game. Maybe we don't cover, but I know Kyler will do everything he can. And if we get the ball in the last 2 minutes, it's donezo.
The line is currently 7.5, and I brought this up again on 49ers Cutback. The Rams Bucks game this week was at -1.5. The Vikings Seahawks -1.5. Packers Niners -3.5. So I want to close out with just a little fun prediction here for our NFC West foes, or opponents, if you will. Bucks Rams. Who's going to win that one, Jay?
Bucks.
Amit?
Bucks.
I'm going to go with even with a score, I'm going to go with the Rams on that one personally, and we shall see if my highness on the Rams is going to be tamed this week or not, or if I will continue spewing that garbage that the Rams are the best in the division. But then we've got
Todd Bowles' defense.
Yeah, exactly.
The Todd Bowles' defense.
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
You are not wrong. I just think LA might get it this week and any given Sunday. So our next matchup is the Seahawks and probably a pissed off Vikings team. Vikings lose a heartbreaker in overtime to the Bengals at Cincinnati week 1, loses heartbreaker to us at Arizona week 2, finally have a home game. They've got Seattle, who just came off a loss. They're pissed off. Amit, Seahawks or Vikings?
Where's that game at?
At Mini.
Minnesota. Take the Vikings.
Jay?
This year, everything that I've been seeing from Seattle, they're way too dependent on Russell bailing them out all the time. I think Minnesota is going to take this in probably a 14-point win.
Wow. I thought it was going to be like a 10. I was thinking 10 plus, somewhere around there. Wow. Not quite 14, but yeah, I thought double figures too.
Seattle has some record where every game has been under 7 points for like their entire, like, I don't know the record, but it's like
under Pete Carroll.
Yeah, there's so many games where the game is just close. So that's
doesn't surprise me.
Taking that.
Yeah.
Okay, Roy. I absolutely Falcons or Giants. I really want to see the Falcons pull this one out. I'm not the biggest Giants fan. I did very much enjoy the game on Thursday night, the Giants and the Redskins, or Washington football team, excuse me. That was a really enjoyable game. I do love me some Saquon Barkley when he's healthy. I do love me some Sterling Shepard, but I've got Kyle Pitts on my team. I want to see him still do some things. I don't really fully trust Matt Ryan this year. I like the unis. I have a lot of friends that are in Atlanta from when I went to college out there. I think the Falcons could pull this out. Let me see where they're playing at real quick. It's at the Giants. I think it's the Falcons' turn to get a dub, my man. I think you're going to be riding high. Do you guys want to weigh in real quick? Amit, what do you think, Falcons or Giants, for one of our loyal listeners, Roy?
I think Danny Dimes is due for some turnovers.
God. Jesus Christ.
I think Matt Ryan is due, even though I think he's broken. I think
he's
broken.
old. Yeah.
He's broken.
Yeah.
But the helmets look sick. The Falcon helmets look sick.
Yeah.
I like their uni combos. Jay, Falcons, G-Men.
Matt Ryan, you're a veteran, bro. You have to win this. You have to win this, man. Like, you might not have a team, but you have to win this. You can't be losing to the Giants, especially how they are right now.
Roy just said that Matt Ryan ain't the same. No, I completely agree. And there was a lot of stuff going on with Matt Ryan in the offseason, by the way, about being traded to the Broncos, because that's, what the Broncos do. They get those 6'6" older quarterbacks and they try to make a run with them. So I get that. But then the final game in the NFC West comes on Sunday night. Should be a fun one considering what's happened for the Green Bay Packers the last 2 weeks, looking completely anemic in week 1 and then dominant in the second half against the Lions. Hard to say that, but then they go at Levi Stadium. That's what it is. The Packers travel to Levi Stadiums against San Francisco. Remember, Aaron Rodgers is from Cal. always puts on a show when he goes back to California. But who do you guys have, Packers or Niners? Jay, let's start with you, please.
This is tricky. Like, part of me wants to say the Niners, but you can't really count out Aaron because he does always show out in the Bay. So I'll probably go with Green Bay.
Amit.
I don't trust the Packers defense, especially against that run.
Fair.
But it's Garoppolo, right? So I'm gonna take a Packers.
Alex has me sold on Jimmy Garoppolo a little bit, the way he came out from the offseason and just taking the number one QB hold with a stranglehold. So granted, it's against a rookie, but he is selling me on Jimmy G a little bit. I hate to say it, but here I am, trying to be the coach and trying to be, not biased and all that. But, we still hope that they lose. I think that the 49ers are going to win this game. It doesn't seem like it matters who their running back is. That guy is going to go out and get you 80 plus yards, probably a touchdown. And then you got old Kyle Juszczyk and Kittle, who really hasn't been targeted that much. I am personally going to go with the Niners that game, but we have a lot of good games on NFL Sunday. I'm going to be all moved in. I've got to come back to my old house and patch up some stuff since we're renting it out and get it ready. So hopefully I can catch some games. I mean, on Monday night, we've got the Eagles and the Cowboys. Both teams are a good 1-1. Like, there's not a good loss in the NFL, but if there was, I would say both teams are a good 1-1 right now. The Saints and the Patriots are going to be good. The Chiefs and the Chargers is another good game. I really kind of want to watch the Ravens and Lions, even though I kind of know what's going to happen in that. But I always root for the Lions since my whole family is really from there. And then, of course, the Bears and the Browns and Bengals and Steelers, as Brad Denny mentioned before.
Justin Fields is starting.
Is he?
And
yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Justin Fields is starting, so QB Watch is officially on in Chi-Town in the Windy City, and I'm a Justin Fields fan, so I am looking forward to watching him. Hopefully I can watch some stuff. So everybody, thank you so much for joining. Please share this out, go to our Anchor site, donate to the podcast if you feel like it. We really would love to keep this going. Go over to our Spotify account, go over to Apple Podcasts, Google Playlists. We're on all the streaming platforms for podcasts. We will be uploading to them soon. Thank you so much for joining He's on Fire podcast. We are going to be coming back. Oh, I started that just too soon. It's a good thing that there was no audio in that one. We are going to be coming back very soon next week, going through absolutely everything that we have discussed on here and seeing if any of the things that we've said comes to fruition. God, I really hope Arizona State can pull it out. I am hopeful. I am pessimist about it. But I think the Sun Devils are going to get it done. And we're going to come back onto this podcast and talk about the Cardinals being 3-0 on Saturday and Sunday night. He's on Fire podcast. Thank you for joining. We out.